You are standing on the processional way in Babylon, the largest city on earth. 200,000 people. The walls on either side of you are covered in glazed blue brick, and 120 stone and golden lions stare down, mouths open, frozen mid-roar. Somewhere behind you, a group of teenage boys is being marched through the gate, surrounded by guards. They are from a city you have never heard of, a place called Jerusalem. One of them is 15 years old. Before this is over, he will watch 3 of his friends thrown into a furnace so hot it kills the soldiers standing next to it. He will be lowered into a pit of lions in the dark, and he will stand in front of kings and tell them things that make them fall to their knees. But that is later. Weeks earlier, this boy was home, 605 BC. Jerusalem. The sun rises over the eastern hills, but something on the horizon is different. A dark line stretches across the ridge, thousands of soldiers in bronze armor with siege towers rolling forward behind them, and archers climbing into position along the hilltops. The Babylonian army has arrived. The battering rams crack through the city walls. Soldiers pour through the gaps with swords drawn, flooding the narrow streets as families grab their children and run. The temple smoke mixes with dust, and the sound of screaming carries across the rooftops. Jerusalem holds for days, and then it falls. When the fighting stops, the soldiers move through the ruined streets with a list. They are not looting. They are looking for children, teenagers from noble families, the smartest, the healthiest, the best-looking. Soldiers break through the door of a house in the upper city and pull a boy away from his family. His name is Daniel. He is 15 years old. 3 of his friends are taken with him, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Their mothers watch from the doorway as the soldiers march them down the street. The march east takes weeks. Daniel and the other boys walk in a column, surrounded by Babylonian guards on horseback. 600 miles through open desert and river valleys, past trading caravans that pay them no attention. Their feet crack and blister on the dry ground. At night, they sleep on dirt, listening to languages they do not understand. Nobody tells them what will happen when they arrive. And then the road widens, and the walls appear. Babylon, the largest city on earth, 200,000 people. The Ishtar Gate rises 38 feet above the road, covered in glazed blue brick, with golden bulls and dragons molded into the surface. The processional way stretches beyond it. A wide avenue lined on both sides with 120 lions in glazed relief mouths, open frozen mid-roar. The air smells like incense and river mud. Daniel has never seen a building taller than the temple in Jerusalem. The ziggurat alone is taller than anything in his entire country. They bring Daniel and the other boys to a hall inside the palace complex. A man is waiting, tall, official, dressed in Babylonian court robes. His name is Ashpenaz, the chief of the king's household. He's in charge of these boys now. Daniel stands against the wall with the others. Ashpenaz walks down the line. He stops in front of Daniel. "Your name is Belteshazzar," he says. Daniel's Hebrew name meant, "God is my judge." His new name means Bel, protect his life. Bel is a Babylonian god. Ashpenaz moves to the next boy, whose name is Hananiah, which means God is gracious in Hebrew. Ashpenaz looks at him. "From now on, you will be called Shadrach," he says. He moves to the next friend, Mishael, whose name means who is like God. Ashpenaz looks at him. "Your name is Meshach," he says. And the last, Azariah, whose name means the Lord has helped. Ashpenaz looks at him. "You will be called Abednego," he says. That night, Daniel sits in the small room they have given him. Stone walls on every side, a window too small to climb through. He tries the door. It does not open from the inside. He pushes against it, then hits it with his shoulder, but nothing moves. He slides down the wall and sits on the cold stone floor, pulling his knees to his chest. Somewhere outside, Babylon hums. Daniel presses his forehead against his knees and closes his eyes. He is completely alone. The next morning, Daniel walks into the training hall and sits down at a long table. Gold plates. The servants bring out roasted meat, rich bread, dark wine from the king's own supply. The other boys from Judah eat without hesitation. Daniel stares at his plate. The meat has been offered to Babylonian gods before it was served. Eating it means taking part in their worship. Every other captive in the room is already doing it. They have all lost the same things Daniel lost, and they have decided this is not worth the fight. Daniel stands up from the table. He finds Ashpenaz and asks if he can eat vegetables and drink water instead. Ashpenaz likes Daniel. The text says God gave Daniel favor in his eyes. But Ashpenaz is afraid. If the king sees these boys looking worse than the others, it will cost Ashpenaz his head. Daniel suggests a test. 10 days, vegetables and water. Compare them to everyone eating the royal food. After 10 days, Daniel and his 3 friends look healthier than every boy eating from the king's table. It is the first time Daniel says number, and the first time Babylon lets him. The training lasts 3 years. Daniel and his friends study at wooden desks, memorize Babylonian star charts, and learn to read and write in a new language. Every evening, Daniel walks to his upper room and opens the window that faces west toward Jerusalem 600 miles away. He kneels, and he prays. Babylon is ruled by a man named Nebuchadnezzar, broad-shouldered, thick-bearded, dressed in robes of deep purple and gold. He built this empire from war and willpower, and every nation in the known world either serves him or fears him. At the end of the 3 years, he tests Daniel and his friends himself, and finds them 10 times sharper than every wise man in his empire. Then one night, Nebuchadnezzar wakes up drenched in sweat. He summons every advisor in Babylon and makes a demand that freezes the throne room. He will not tell them what the dream was. They must tell him the dream and its meaning. If they cannot, he will have every one of them cut to pieces. The wise men beg. There is not a man on earth who can do what the king asks, they say. Nebuchadnezzar gives the order, kill them all. The soldiers come for Daniel too. He asks for time, goes to his room, and kneels at the same west-facing window. That night, the vision comes. Daniel sees it as clearly as if he was standing in front of it. A massive statue, towering against a dark sky. Its head is pure gold, gleaming. Its chest and arms are silver, its waist is bronze, its legs are iron, and its feet are made of iron mixed with clay, cracked and unstable. Then a rock appears, cut from a mountain by no human hand. It strikes the feet. The statue shatters. Gold, silver, bronze, iron, all of it blown away like dust in the wind. The rock grows until it fills the whole earth. The next morning, Daniel stands before the throne and describes the dream detail for detail. Nebuchadnezzar's face changes. Daniel tells him what it means. Each metal is a kingdom, and they will rise and fall one after another. Nebuchadnezzar's empire is the head of gold, but it will not last. The most powerful man on earth falls on his face before Daniel and promotes him on the spot. Ruler over the entire province of Babylon, chief of all the wise men. Daniel's 3 friends are appointed alongside him. Nebuchadnezzar heard the warning, and his response is to build the very thing God warned him about, a statue made entirely of gold, 90 feet tall, planted in the plain of Dura, where it gleams under the open sky. The plain stretches flat and dry under the midday sun, with thousands of officials gathered in ordered rows, sweating in the heat. At the far end, a furnace burns, massive. built of brick and iron, tall enough for a man to stand inside, with flames pouring from its mouth and heat rippling the air in every direction. Nebuchadnezzar gives the order. When the music plays, every person on the plain will bow down and worship the gold statue. Anyone who refuses will be thrown into the furnace. The music plays. Horns, flutes, and lyres echo across the open ground. The entire plain drops to its knees. 3 men remain standing: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the same 3 boys who were marched through the gates of Babylon with Daniel years ago, now grown men with beards and broad shoulders, dressed in the robes of Babylonian officials. Word reaches Nebuchadnezzar. The king slams his hand on the arm of his throne, his face red with fury, and points toward the 3 figures still standing in the distance. "Bring them to me," he shouts. Soldiers drag the 3 men across the dirt to the base of the statue where the king is waiting. Nebuchadnezzar looks at them. He knows these men. He tells them he will play the music one more time, and if they bow, this will be forgotten. The 3 men look back at him and do not move. The king leans forward until his face is close to theirs. "And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands?" he says. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answer together. "The God we serve is able to deliver us from the furnace," they say. "But even if he does not, we will not serve your gods or worship your statue." Nebuchadnezzar's face twists with rage. He orders the furnace heated 7 times hotter than normal. The soldiers pile more fuel into the opening until the flames roar so loud they drown out every other sound on the plain. Guards grab the 3 men, bind their hands and feet, and drag them toward the furnace mouth. The heat is so fierce that the soldiers carrying them collapse and die before they can step away. The guards behind them shove the 3 bound men forward. They fall into the blaze. The court watches in silence. Seconds pass. Then Nebuchadnezzar stands up from his throne. His face goes white. He grips the arm of his seat with both hands and stares into the fire, his mouth open. "Did we not throw 3 men into the fire?" he says, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, your majesty," a guard standing beside him says. "I see 4, the king says. "And the 4th looks like a son of the gods." Inside the furnace, the 3 men are walking. Their ropes have burned away, but their skin has not. Their clothes are untouched. And beside them stands a 4th figure, taller, broader, glowing with a warm golden light that makes the fire around him look dim. He walks with them through the flames as calmly as if they were crossing an open field. Nebuchadnezzar stumbles toward the furnace opening. The crowd presses closer. The king calls out to them by name. "Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out," he shouts, his voice cracking. The 3 men walk out, one after another. The officials crowd around them, touching their robes, leaning in close. Not burned, not singed. They do not even smell like smoke. The only things the fire destroyed were the ropes that bound them. Nebuchadnezzar stands in front of them, silent. The man who built a 90-foot gold statue and dared any god to challenge him has nothing to say. In the years that follow, the king who dared a god to challenge him loses his mind. He is driven from his throne and lives like an animal in the open fields for 7 years, eating grass. His hair matted, his nails grown into claws. When his reason returns, he says quietly, "Those who walk in pride, he is able to humble." He dies 5 years later. His dynasty crumbles within months. Sons murdered, generals overthrown, the banners on the palace walls, changing with each new ruler. Daniel serves through all of it. Every new ruler finds the same thing. The old Jewish exile in the upper room is the smartest man in the building. They keep him. 30 years have passed since Nebuchadnezzar's death. Daniel is in his 80s now, white-haired, thin-handed, but sharp as the day he stood before the throne. The latest king is a man named Belshazzar, young, soft-faced, draped in silk. A man who inherited this empire without earning it and rules it carelessly. One night, Belshazzar throws a party in the great banquet hall. Marble columns rising 30 feet to a cedar ceiling, 1,000 guests crowding the long tables. And then he does something no previous king ever dared. He sends for the gold and silver cups that Nebuchadnezzar looted from the temple in Jerusalem. Sacred vessels taken from the house of Israel's God, fills them with wine and passes them around the table. The room is laughing, shouting, spilling wine on the floor, and then every voice stops at once. A light appears on the far wall, soft at first, then brighter. Glowing fingers press against the plaster fingers made of light, with no hand, no arm, no body behind them, carving letters that no one in the room can read. Belshazzar's cup slips from his hand. His knees buckle. He screams for his wise men, but none of them can read the writing. The queen remembers a name from the old court: Daniel. Daniel walks in slowly, past the overturned cups and spilled wine. He stops in front of the wall, looks at the glowing words, and turns to face the king. "You knew all of this, Belshazzar," Daniel says. "You watched what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. And instead of learning from it, you took the sacred cups from God's own temple and drank wine from them while praising gods that cannot see, cannot hear, and cannot think." He reads the writing. 3 Aramaic words: Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. "Your kingdom has been numbered," Daniel says. "You have been weighed and found wanting. Your empire will be divided and given to the Persians." That night, the Persians walk in through the dry riverbed under the city walls, while the king is still drinking from stolen cups. Belshazzar is killed before morning. The empire that took Daniel from his home falls in a single night. When the sun rises, the banners on the walls are Persian. Daniel walks to his upper room, opens the window that faces west, and prays. The new Persian king, Darius, grey-bearded, deliberate, needs administrators he can trust. He promotes Daniel to chief governor over the entire kingdom. The other officials hate it. They search for corruption, for negligence, for anything to use against him, but they find nothing. Daniel is faithful in everything he does, so they build a trap around the one thing Daniel will never stop doing. They flatter Darius into signing a law. For 30 days, no person may pray to any god except the king. Anyone who breaks the law will be thrown into a den of lions. Under Persian law, once signed, the decree cannot be taken back. Daniel hears about the law. He goes home, walks up the stone stairway to his upper room, opens the window that faces west and prays. 3 times a day, with the window open, in full view of the street below. They are watching. The officials report Daniel to Darius. The king's face changes. He realizes the law was built to destroy Daniel. He paces the throne room, calling for advisors, but the law is irreversible. At sunset, soldiers walk Daniel through the streets as the sky turns orange. The people stop and watch. The old man walking calmly between the guards, his white hair catching the last of the light. They bring him to the den, a deep pit cut into the rock outside the city walls. From inside, the low growl of lions echoes up through the dark. Darius stands at the edge. "May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you," he says, his voice tight. The soldiers lower Daniel into the pit. A stone is rolled over the opening, and Darius seals it with his own signet ring. Darius walks back to the palace, waves away his food, and sends the musicians out. He lies on his bed and stares at the ceiling in the dark, unable to think about anything except what is happening in that pit. Inside the den, Daniel sits on the cold stone floor. The darkness is total. Around him, the lions breathe, shifting in the enclosed space, their claws scraping the rock, their low rumbling so close he can feel it in his chest. One of them moves toward him, its breath hot on his skin, and then a light fills the pit, warm, golden, steady, pressing back the darkness like a slow sunrise. The lions go still, and their rumbling stops. A figure stands beside Daniel, taller than a man, glowing with the same warm light that filled the furnace years ago. The angel does not speak. He does not need to. The lions lower their heads, press against the far wall, and close their mouths. Daniel is 80 years old, sitting in a pit of lions in golden light, and he does what he has done every evening for 65 years. He prays. At the first light of dawn, Darius runs to the den and calls out, his voice breaking, "Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God able to deliver you from the lions?" he says. For a moment there is nothing, just the sound of Darius breathing and the distant call of a bird somewhere over the walls of Babylon. And then, from the darkness below, "My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths," Daniel says. "They have not hurt me." They break the seal and roll the slab away. Morning light floods the den. And there is Daniel, sitting calmly on the floor, unharmed. He looks up at the circle of daylight and shields his eyes with one thin hand. They pull him out. The officials who built the trap watch, their faces pale. The men who accused Daniel are thrown into the den. The lions crush their bones before they reach the floor. Darius issues a new decree. In every corner of the Persian Empire, people are to fear and tremble before the God of Daniel. The God who saves, who rescues, who shuts the mouths of lions. Daniel stands in the courtyard of the palace as the decree is read aloud. The sun is warm on his face. He has been in Babylon for 65 years. He arrived as a boy of 15 with nothing, no power, no allies, no way home. They took his name, his language, his food, and his future. And in 65 years, he never gave them the one thing they wanted most, his God. He never went home. Every evening, Daniel walks to his upper room and opens the window that faces west. The city stretches below him, different now, Persian flags where Babylonian ones used to hang. New faces in the streets, a new language in the markets. But the window is the same. The direction is the same. Jerusalem is still 600 miles to the west, and Daniel still kneels on the same stone floor, folds his thin hands and prays to the same God he prayed to when he was 15 years old and completely alone in a room with a window too small to climb through. The empires changed around him, their names, their kings, their gods. But Daniel never did. They gave him a Babylonian name on his first day in this city. But every evening, in this room, kneeling at this window, he was Daniel. God is my judge. The last light of the day falls across the stone. Daniel closes his eyes. 65 years. Same window, same direction, same God.